Step-by-step guide to configuring multi-factor authentication in Microsoft Entra using various authenticators. Objective. In this guide, you will create 3 Azure Active Directory accounts and configure multi-factor authentication for each using Microsoft Authenticator, Google Authenticator, and Okta Authenticator. Prerequisites to follow the guide. Access to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center with permissions to create and manage Azure Active Directory accounts. A smartphone to install the Microsoft Authenticator, Google Authenticator, and Okta Authenticator applications. Task breakdown. Step 1. Log in to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. Go to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center at https://admin.microsoft.com. Sign in with your administrator credentials. In the left-hand menu, go to Show All Azure Active Directory. This will open the Azure Active Directory management options. Step 2. Create 3 Azure Active Directory user accounts. In the Azure Active Directory section, navigate to Users and select Plus New User. Create 3 new user accounts with unique usernames using the following naming scheme. User 1. Your first name, last name Microsoft. User 2. Your first name, last name Google. User 3. Your first name, last name Okta. Set a temporary password for each account. Ensure that you record these details securely for use later, especially during the multi-factor authentication testing. Step 3. Enable multi-factor authentication for each account. In the Azure Active Directory section, go to Users and select Multi-Factor Authentication. In the Multi-Factor Authentication portal, search for each of the 3 new accounts. Select each account and enable multi-factor authentication for each user. Step 4. Configure different multi-factor authentication authenticator applications for each user. Note: if you encounter any issues related to browser functionality, such as cache sessions or pop-up blockers, try using a different browser for each user. User 1. Use Microsoft Authenticator. Sign in to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center with the Azure Active Directory account for User 1. During the sign-in process, you'll be prompted to set up multi-factor authentication. Follow the prompts to add the account to the Microsoft Authenticator application on your smartphone. User 2. Use Google Authenticator. Sign in to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center with the Azure Active Directory account for User 2. During the sign-in process, you'll be prompted to set up multi-factor authentication. Select Authenticator application and choose I want to use a different Authenticator application. Open Google Authenticator on your smartphone, scan the QR code, and complete the setup. User 3. Use Okta Authenticator. Sign into the Microsoft 365 Admin Center with the Azure Active Directory account for User 3. During the sign-in process, you will be prompted to set up multi-factor authentication. Select Authenticator application and choose I want to use a different Authenticator application. Open Okta Authenticator on your smartphone, scan the QR code, and complete the setup. Step 5. Test the multi-factor authentication configurations. Sign out of each account and sign back in. Verify that the multi-factor authentication prompts for each user are associated with the correct Authenticator application. User 1 should receive a multi-factor authentication prompt via Microsoft Authenticator. User 2 should receive a multi-factor authentication prompt via Google Authenticator. User 3 should receive a multi-factor authentication prompt via Okta Authenticator.